Hi, my name is Bridget Richardson. I'm the Assistant Director of Ecumenical and Pastoral Initiatives at the Nesti Center for Faith and Culture at University of St. Thomas in Houston. And I'm so excited. This is our third and final conversation for our Faithful Citizenship celebration leading up to that celebration on Wednesday, October 7th. And the focus will be on family life in the United States. And I'm here today with our two honorees for that celebration, Dr. Joe and Cathy Garcia-Prats. And Cathy is a well-known author and speaker, and Dr. Joe Garcia-Prats, he's a practicing neonatologist, a professor of pediatrics and ethics at Baylor College of Medicine, and they're parents of 10 sons. So they've got quite an impressive life under your belt, really. But they're definitely people who model what it means to be ministers of sacramental marriage. And Cathy and Dr. Joe have gone beyond their own family life circle even to assist others and mentor others in family and helping people live that to the fullest. So today we're going to have a conversation about families and institutional leadership, a very interesting connection to make. And Cathy and Dr. Joe are going to go over three different categories: shared vision, developing individuals, and psychological safety. So Dr. Joe, if you'll just kick us off in helping us understand what is shared vision when we're talking about both family and institutional leadership.
Yeah, I think we hear about shared vision when we talk about leadership in institutions, whether that's a parish, the archdiocese, a hospital, a school, any kind of a business. I think if we're going to have any kind of success, then we must have a shared vision that everybody who comes into the office that day, comes into our family, is going to use that to guide their day and the choices that they make. And so that becomes very, very important that we as an institution, or that we as a parish, or we as a family have that. Cathy is really good about when she says what, or when they ask her, what did you want? Then she's really good about saying, this is what we wanted as a family and as a marriage. So Cathy, I think you do a great job about that.
Oh yeah, I think very much so that, well, we're not a business as such, you as a family, as a couple, you have to have an idea of where you want to be. What kind of a family do you want to be? What kind of individuals do you want to be? And so for Joe and I, although we came from different cultures and a little bit of different backgrounds, we did share very similar goals and vision of what we wanted in life. And, we often say that, we wanted our sons to be loving and caring and responsible, respectful, well-educated and faith-filled individuals. And in order for that to even be a possibility, it meant that Joe and I had to strive every day. And I use the word strive really with capital letters, because we're just like everyone else. We have our ups and downs, but those were our goals. We knew what we wanted. And we wanted also that our success would be measured in non-monetary terms. Too much of what society is telling us today, you're successful if you have this or you do this. And we wanted our sons and ourselves to appreciate that it's who we are and what we're doing with the gifts God's given us and how we live our lives that ultimately is what is important.
And I think what that reflects is a shared vision has value. If your shared vision has no value, then it's going to be very difficult for everybody to join in and be part of that movement to improve your family, to improve your parish, improve the world. So it must have value. And I think that oftentimes that's the big challenge. If we as a family had said, or if Cathy and I have said, we just want all of our kids to be cool and we want to be the richest family on the block, I'm not sure that would have instigated or have gotten much buy-in from the rest of our family. So a shared vision that again has great value is really very, very important. No, we're not really going to move on beyond that. So,
and it helps you set your priorities. What's really important to achieve that vision. I'll use one profound example. Educating our sons was really an important part of who we are. We felt like an education is a gift you give your children that no one can take away. And so for us, prioritizing that was important. And so, we felt very, felt very strongly that we wanted our sons in a faith-based school environment. And so the boys have all gone through Catholic education. That's a financial commitment. And so when you make that as a priority, then you have to make other choices in your life. What's important to you? Were we going to buy, maybe a more expensive car, or is that money going to go to tuition? You make those choices and set those priorities. And when you agree on that as a couple, and know that's where you're going, then making those choices become choices out of love and easy choices in our book. Not for everybody, but for us, it became that's what we want.
So that's really kind of how you get your team together and have your team all pull in the same direction. And so team building is certainly in every business or in any kind of institution, that becomes so important. And so nurturing that team, nurturing the boys, nurturing each other becomes very important, because if I can't nurture Cathy and she can't nurture me, we're really going to have a struggle in trying to get to that same shared vision and work towards that same shared vision. So that becomes very important in the direction that you set, is working as a team, collaborating. It sounds kind of, I don't know if marriage counselors would consider collaboration and team building as part of what they would work on. And yet, I think it's really, some of the concepts are the same. And so,
and it's accepting yourself, and what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and working to build each other up instead of tearing each other down. Joe has his strengths and he brings that to our marriage. He brings it to his work, and vice versa. And we always said, a couple, you need to be building each other up. Joe's love for me should make me a better person, and my love for Joe should make him a better person. Well, in a business or a school or wherever you are, if you're helping that other person to grow and be stronger, you're strengthening that organization. You have to look at the strengths of those people and in your organization and help them to be better in what you're doing.
And so that's really, I think, crucial to what we do in an institution. Having that team feel that shared vision and work towards that. And Cathy mentioned how important it was to nurture and build each other up. Well, I think that's teams. Teams build each other up. Teams look at each other and value each other and respect each other, and therefore build each other up. And that's how we all get better. I always say that collaboration is risky. And I tell my colleagues that collaboration is really risky, because someone's going to tell you what you really didn't want to hear. And when that happens, that's a little bit of that kind of puts you a little bit on edge. It's maybe not what you wanted to hear, but it maybe stretches you a little bit. And so nurturing that relationship of team and building a valued member of where you're going is really very, very important. And eventually that, brings or provides great fruit, and your team just blossoms. And that's really very important. I tell frequently in seeing how I matured as a parent, I think early on, especially whether the boys were swimming or baseball or playing soccer, I think I focused on all the mistakes that they made in the course of a game. And I think I sometimes harped on that too much, and realized that was really not a very good way to approach anybody, because I think your first response is going to be defensive. It hurts. I'm not, once you threaten me, now I'm on the defensive, and I probably haven't heard much of what you've had to say. And so I realized that was not the way to approach our children, and eventually I realized that's not the way I approach my colleagues. I watched people be positive. And just think of when you've had a really good day. Think about everything that's gone right. You've gotten 6 compliments. You're just riding high. And then someone walks in and said, Bridget or Cathy, would you take on this other project? Well, you're going to say, well, of course, I can do that. And so therefore, you are willing to stretch. If you're just trying to defend yourself, if you're just trying to get through the day, then someone comes to you and say, would you do this project for me? Would you help me? Your response is going to be, I'm just trying to take care of myself today. I just want to get through the day without feeling as bad as I'm feeling right now. So you're not going to stretch. So the violinist, the ballet dancer, the soccer player, you just go right down the line. Or just, dealing with your spouse that day is really going to be tough. But when you feel like you're on your game, yeah, it's like, bring it on, I'm ready. So I think that's really important in all of our relationships.
I think it kind of one of our philosophies, and it kind of goes back to our Ignatian education. I think that one of the things you always hear is open to growth. And I think that's an important part of who we are as individuals. And I think we've encouraged that with each other, but with our boys as well. Be open to trying new things, to doing new things. Too often in our society, and I saw it so much with parenting, is we want our children to be the best instead of their best. Maybe their best is a C in that course. I look back in college and, I got a C in economics. I was an education major. That I learned so much in that course. I had a great professor. He couldn't understand why this education major was in this business class, but he was so impressed. But I was open to growth, learning. And I think that's what we've tried to encourage with others, not only within our family, but with others. Try this, give it a try. I'm doing things today that I would never, weren't on my bucket list or anything. But if we're open to that and trust that God is leading you in a certain direction, then it just makes a difference in your approach to life.
So one of the books that we talked about was Mindset. I think it's Dr. Carol Dweck. I can never pronounce her last name. But that was really a very interesting book for me to read. One would think that in my professional stage in life that I would know a lot and maybe I shouldn't be too open or ready to learn more. And yet, after reading that, I started realizing that every day is an opportunity to grow and learn even more. And having that open mindset is so important. When someone comes up and challenges you, you should say, wow, maybe I ought to look at this a little bit differently. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to grow and to be open to that direction or that suggestion. I think it's crucial to continuing to grow every day, no matter what stage in life you are. And that applies to all of us and all leaders as well. If you can't be open and willing to listen, then I think you've missed a lot of opportunities to take your organization, your family, your parish, your diocese, your hospital to another level.
I think it also has to do with that whole issue of respect that's so important within our relationship and with our sons and with everyone we work with. It's starts with self-respect. You have to respect yourself and know who you are and where you're going. But I do think it's how you talk to each other, how you respond to that person that comes in with a new idea. Are you going to say, oh my gosh, that's the craziest idea in the world, and not listen to it all? And I had that happen once where someone looked at me and said, that's a ridiculous idea. Eventually, after many times, that idea was actually adopted. It was kind of funny, but that respect in how you treat the other person and look at their ideas and their creativity. We're amazed at our sons and and the way they approach things. 10 individuals, and they all have their unique gifts and ways of doing things and what their strengths are, and yet they build each other up, and they know who to go to for certain things. They'll go to Danny, how would you do this? Tony, how can you explain this to me? They work with each other and respect each other in how they talk to each other and how they treat each other. It's a real gift that they give each other. And I think you do that within an organization, whether it's teachers building each other up, sharing ideas. How would you work with this student? How would you approach this math issue? It's all a matter of how you respect each other.
We've certainly seen that, and good teams do that. Again, I continue to refer to teams because I think that's so crucial in an organization. I find that organizations that are very top-down are harder to work in, whereas those that flip that just a little bit tend to be a little bit more successful, because I can remember my head nurse and I came up with this, what we thought was a fantastic idea how to approach a problem. And we took it to our frontline people, and they just shook their head and said, that'll never work. And so we were both very surprised, but we learned a lot. And so then we started realizing, let's take our ideas to our colleagues who are on the front line, and let's see whether this is a good idea or not. And so having that respect for their concerns and knowledge is really important. And then can you imagine how they felt that we were coming to them? And so I think that's really very, very important that that's the case. So anyway, and it's kind of worked out for the boys as well.
Yeah, and I think so much of that conversation of respect feeds into that second part about developing individuals. So maybe, Cathy, you can speak a little bit on how you would develop individuals within that family structure, having 10 sons. And I love the story that you tell. They all went to different colleges. They're all very uniquely themselves. It's so beautiful. So maybe you could share a little bit on that.
And I think that's the fascinating thing for me was just how similar they were in many ways, and yet just how different right from the beginning. I mean, Tony and David were both very bright, but they had totally different personalities, and fostering that and accepting that, not trying to make David into a Tony or Tony into a David, trying to encourage them when they might be struggling in something or they wanted to be better at something. Joe and I even were talking recently, we were talking about kind of this mindset, and I also remember Danny getting out, and he was probably, it was either middle school or high school, I'm not sure which, wanting to become a better soccer player. And so he would get out every afternoon and kick that ball against the curb, and, getting that touch, they'll talk about touch in soccer, and the way they encouraged each other when they were competing in swimming. Joe Pat was right between Matt and Chris every year. He was either swimming with Chris or he was swimming with Matt, and made him better. He wanted to compete with the two of them, but they also found different strokes that they were interested in. And you're right, when they went off to college, they had different interests. People said 10 colleges. Yeah, it was kind of fascinating. I was challenged, the college counselor at Straight Jesuit, that I'd probably seen as many campuses as he had over the 10 sons, and learning how to manipulate the whole thing. People came to me for college advice, but fostering those unique talents, looking at them, how can we encourage him to be better at whether it's soccer or in school? How can we help him maybe work through some of the challenges with his math or his science? Looking at that, not making them all say, okay, you're all going to be doctors like your dad, which we too often see. Letting them enjoy their strengths and what they're doing.
Cathy tells a great story too about Joe Pat. So Joe Pat was our most I guess I would. He's socially gifted.
Yeah.
And Cathy would mention this at a talk, and people would look at her like, socially gifted, is that really a gift? And it really was. He's just the individual who will bring things alive. Cathy, why don't you tell me that story about touring the freshmen or the potential freshmen over at...
Yeah, we always laugh, that at Straight Jesuit, they all went to Straight. You were not going to ask Tony to give a tour at Straight Jesuit. It just wasn't his personality. But Joe Pat gave so many tours of that school during his years there because he brought it to life. I mean, he could go into the cafeteria and say, eat every day, but don't eat on Wednesday. He'd go to the gym and he'd bring it to life. He wouldn't say, this is the gym, this is this. He just brought it to life. And they did. They loved having Joe Pat give tours. Of course, he loved it because he got taken out of class and he got a free lunch and, all those things. But it was his personality that was great. You weren't going to put him on the academic challenge team. He did well, but he wasn't going to be on the academic challenge. You'd have had, Tony and Matt and some of the other boys maybe on that kind of thing. So yeah, it's fun to see how that worked. And we laugh now because he went into the cell phone industry. You tell me that's not a good fit. And into the business. He was an international business major at Regis. And so it just, it fit his personality and his strengths. And they've all done that. I mean, Chris, he started out as a business major at Trinity and then one day called and said, Mom, I just don't think that's for me. And I think he was worried that, Joe and I would be concerned and, oh my gosh. And no, we said, you have to do what you love. If you don't do what you love, then every day waking up is a chore. So he went into coaching. He's coaching at Luther College up in little Decorah, Iowa, great experience. He's done very well. And we told him, you can make an impact on people no matter what you do, whether you're in business or you're teaching or you're a coach or you're, a physician, whatever. If you are doing what you're using the gifts God's given you, you can't go wrong.
Well, and I think part of that, or at least what rose, another important aspect of all of this, certainly within team building, is feeling safe, that you can express your needs and your concerns. I think we've always, at least hopefully, have been that way towards our children and towards our colleagues and people that we work with. And that's been shown over and over again how important it is for good team building. The teams that do well, the teams that feel safe, actually report more mistakes than any other team. And so people were initially thrown by that. They said, why are these teams that are so high functioning, why do they have so many reports of issues? Well, it's because they all felt safe and they realized that was an important part of their team building, finding something that maybe didn't work exactly right and wanted it to work right. And so those were the teams that were the most effective, and you wanted to be part of that team because it was safe, you were respected, and you felt very important part of that whole mechanism, that whole collaboration. And so that's really very, very important. And so I'm not sure that we as a couple or as a family called it that. And yet I think it's part and parcel of being successful.
And I think it goes back to that whole respect issue as well. That it's a right, I think, to feel safe and loved within your home. And if you're not treated with respect in the way you're talked to or the way you're treated, then you don't feel that security and that safety within your home. The boys could come to us and ask us things and talk to us. Some more than others felt more comfortable doing that, depending on personalities. We used to laugh at some of the comments, but that's important thing that, you can share with the other person. We did not allow them to call each other names. That's demeaning, and no one should feel that in their own home. And so that respect issue, especially in the way you talk to each other, I think it's paramount in a home, in a business, that issue of respect.
Certainly, the Bible has many references to the power of the tongue and what it can do, and that we certainly have seen that, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, Bridget, in your interactions with people and stuff. So, a very powerful and important part of your daily life. You have to be careful what you say and how you say it.
I think you have to make whatever you do somewhat fun. If it's all drudgery and hard work, then what is it? What's fun? I like to share the story. The boys used to think I like music. I am not musically talented. I like music, and so I would put on Camelot and Sound of Music, and anyway, and the boys would laugh at me. I'm mopping the floor and singing along. But then we laughed when they started doing the dishes when they got old enough in their middle school and older years, and would put on their music and bop along as they went along. And so, it made that chore a little easier to take, to do it. And so, it was what it was. I didn't say a thing. You didn't have to say, see, it works. They just did it. And yeah, I think you have to make life as a family fun. So
we were in a strategy meeting. They're coming up with a 5-year plan for the institution, and the consultants were asking different questions, and it was in retrospect, I was saying, dealing with these individuals really makes it fun to go to work. And in retrospect, I thought, I'm not sure that fun is necessarily in the vocabulary of many of our consultants, but it is fun. And that's kind of what I want to encourage, that it's going to be fun to come to work, that you want to come to work, that it's not going to be a drudgery. It's not going to be something that you don't enjoy. Gosh, that's what makes coming to work so much fun, is the interaction with our colleagues, the respect we get, how they build us up, how they want to get better, how they have this shared vision. And I guess that's the other important part of the shared vision, is that I find that each team member is nurturing themselves and finding that joined vision, in that they're nurturing themselves and where they're going, because that shared vision is still part of their development. And so when you're surrounded by people like that, it really is fun to go to work. And so I think that that's kind of the same thing. Having a fun family maybe isn't what people put up there as a high priority, and yet it is what happens when you have a good working family.
And I remember David's
each other
recently, our son David, and he said, we weren't jealous of each other's success. We celebrated each other's success. And I think that's important, that you look at, what your colleague does or your friend does, and you celebrate that. There's, you don't want to be envious of them. Maybe say, oh my gosh, I'd love to be like that. Well, then work towards that. Be open to developing that skill or that talent, whatever it is. But to celebrate each other's success. I remember when Tony graduated from Straight Jesuit, and Tony had done very, very well. And at graduation, I remember Joe Pat coming up, and and Tony had given the salutatorian address, and he said, and Joe Pat said, I felt so puffed up. He was so proud of his brother, probably knowing likelihood of me being at that level is not going to happen, but to be able to celebrate that success, to be able to go to when Luther College has done so well, they've made it to, Elite Eight and wonderful successes, for the boys to be together and to follow it and to be streaming it. They're celebrating in Chris's success. and with their families. I mean, oh my gosh, they just adore each other's children and each other. So yeah, we celebrate. We do a lot of celebrating in our family. We're not big party kind of people, but we celebrate with each other. So it's exciting. This time during this COVID has been really hard on us as a family. Yeah, we miss those times.
I'm gonna also kind of jump on this concept of celebration and being positive. There is an approach that we kind of were recommended as we were trying to come up with a faculty retreat, and it's called appreciative inquiry. I'd never heard of this before, but it's a very, I wouldn't say it's very popular, but I think it's very innovative. The approach is very different than most retreats, which would be, okay, let's get together and let's focus on the needs of our division or of our institution. Let's see where the problems are, and then let's really work hard to solve our problems. Well, that's somewhat a little bit negative, right? We're going to identify all the problems in our organization, work on them. So appreciative inquiry kind of flips it around just a little bit. They take all the stakeholders and say, all right, identify all of our strengths. And it's a process of then saying, oh, this person has this, and we do this, and we're very good at this. And by essentially focusing on the strengths and nurturing the strengths and putting groups together that have those strengths, all the problems seem to take care of themselves as you develop and nurture that. And so I think it's kind of the same way for any institution, be it, again, a parish, an archdiocese, a hospital, a school, a family, that if we really work on our strengths, then our problems tend to be dealt with so much more easily. So not that it always is easy, but I think that's a way to change and flip our approach to some of these issues. And certainly for families, that certainly works, I think.
Well, when you told me about that, I was floored because I think it's inspired, and it definitely touches on that third part of our conversation about psychological safety, which both of you have really been touching on throughout the whole conversation. And, showing that joy. People show joy when they feel empowered to be who they are and they feel accepted. They feel okay about making mistakes. So how does that psychological safety and that appreciative inquiry, how does that tie into shoring up a family or shoring up a team at an institution?
I think it gets down to one of the things that Cathy said, and that's respect. And then if you have respect, then what builds on that is nurturing and celebrating one's talents. When you get to celebrating one's talents, that really is quite an empowering feeling. And I think we touched upon it a little bit about having that great day, right? Having that great day. And therefore you're ready to take on the next issue and handle it with aplomb and such a positive way. And so I think that's part and parcel of how one would hope to keep building yourself, right? So again, I think one of the most important things I've learned from Cathy has to do with the whole issue of self-respect. I'm going to punt this one to her when she talks about the whole issue of self-love and love your neighbor as yourself. So Cathy, you want to kind of...
and just leaning into what, we were talking about, how you have this great day, but what happens when you have a really crummy day? And I know early on, I'd have, we had 5 of the boys in 6 years. Joe's hours were pretty crazy. 3 were in diapers, and there were days I was really overwhelmed and struggled. And they weren't good days. They weren't days where I could say, oh, I was a great mother. But it meant at the end of the day, and I often would do that, okay, if I had to do this day over, what could I have done differently? How could I have maybe handled this situation with the boys when they were maybe kind of, fussing with each other and not getting along? How could I have maybe been a little bit more patient with Joe? What could I have done differently? And I think that, doing that allows you then to try the next time to make a different choice, to better yourself in how you're doing things. I also think so much of it is your faith. I feel very grateful to Father Donovan at the parish we were at the time, who opened an adoration chapel, the 24 hours sacramental chapel, and that time being in there, the gift of silence. I don't think I ever appreciated how important silence is in your faith life. I often will say that, we do all the talking. We're always talking, but we never take that time to be quiet and listen and hear what God has to say to you. People would say, well, oh, God doesn't to me. Well, number one, what he does, I don't hear him per se. You hear it in your heart. And in your soul, where God is calling you, what he wants from you. And it was during those of being quiet in that chapel that I started appreciating a little bit more. This is what God is calling me to be that mother. This is where I've put you right now. And no, you're not going to be perfect in every way, but to be that loving and caring, compassionate, forgiving, responsible person. And it gave me a different lift in life. Things that seemed like chores before became more acts of love. Because if you're not doing it out of love, then in the eyes of God, it means nothing. St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, where he tells you that you can move mountains, you can give your body up to be burned, you can all those things, but if they're not done with love, in the eyes of God, they meant nothing. So I could do all the wash, I could make great meals, I could make sure the kids got to school on time, but if I wasn't doing it with love in my heart, then in the eyes of God, I was just doing things. It didn't mean anything. And so to change that and to accept, okay, this is where I am right now. It's a little hectic. It's a little busy. But if I do it with love, then there's going to be more joy in my day. And I think then that follows over into Joel. It makes his day a little more joyful. It makes the boys a little more joyful. They don't have this, griping mom, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, type of thing, which is where we are sometimes. We're constantly, oh, we had to do this, we had to do that. But if you're doing it out of love, then you don't feel it's a chore and a burden. It's a gift that you're giving those people in your life.
Yeah, I'm going to, the gospel story about Mary Magdalene and Martha. And I've always kind of sided with Martha. Martha she did the hard work. She did the heavy lifting, and she was not very pleased with Mary. And so for the longest time, I really struggled with that gospel. I said, gee whiz, boy, Martha really got the short stick on this one. And how did the good Lord let this happen? And then I started thinking, just like Cathy said, if Martha would have just said, this is my role, this is what I have chosen to do, this is how I'm going to serve my Lord by doing these things. And yes, it's good that Mary gets to do that. It is great. I am so happy that she ministered to Christ in that very special way. And I chose to do my ministering to him in a very different way. This is what I chose. And just like Cathy said, I'm going to do it with great love. And this was how I'm going to do it. And so once I kind of understood that, I felt as though I could do a lot of things that I have chosen with great love. And I was still happy that other people got to do things differently for Christ in their own way. So I listened a lot to what Cathy said, and that gospel made a lot more sense after that. The other thing she said too, that I'm not sure we do all the time, and yet I think it's an important part of and I'll say this as a leader, but whether you're a pastor or you're a bishop or whether you're a CEO or CFO, self-reflection is a very important part of leadership. Just like Cathy said, at the end of the day, sitting down and thinking, this is what I did well and this is what I didn't do well. really is very, very important. So, and again, silence is crucial. I used to always turn on the radio on the way to work and listen to the weather forecast and the news, etc. And after one of our, I can't remember who, talked about the importance of silence. And I just shut the radio off. I don't listen to the radio in the morning to work. And I've been amazed at the different things that come to mind. I call the Holy Spirit purveyor of random thoughts. And really, he is the purveyor of random thoughts. Just all of a sudden, something will pop into your mind in that moment of silence. And, that's the Holy Spirit. There's just no doubt in my mind. So silence is really important in trying to integrate that in your day. And as you know, silence is not always a full part of your day. So being self-reflective is really very important. But again, I think it has to be, Christ has to be part of that reflection.
I agree. I think, sometimes, he's going to ask us to do things that, you would not intellectually choose to do. And I'm going to use our family as an example. We felt very much called to have our children. Joe and I always laugh. We did want a big family. We kind of always said, oh, we'll have 5 kids. And God was very good. He gave us the 5 wonderful sons. And then we literally, in that silence, going to that chapel, we felt called to have more. Very countercultural. I mean, people thought we were crazy having 5. So, as we had 6, 7 on, I think people gave up on us, but that was okay. We always tell the story when we were being interviewed by one of the local stations once, and I was sharing this story that it was probably part of our faith journey, very much a part of our faith journey, and Tommy was there. Tommy's our 7th son. And he said, and we're so glad Mom and Dad said yes. And so the reporter said, and what number are you? And he said, number 7. And so, it was just really cute. But to have our life without Mark, Tommy, Danny, Jamie, and Timmy would be, we couldn't even begin to imagine what it would be like. The joy they've brought to each other and to us is a real gift. So we in many ways have had to lead a countercultural life, the choices we've made, but we're filled with joy and happiness and love, and God takes care of us. We believe if we trust in him and we do our part, we just don't throw it up and say, okay, God, you gave us this, make it happen. He led us to make other choices that enabled us to educate the boys for their needs, not always their wants. And so that the faith component, trusting, is paramount.
Yeah, I want to pick up on trust. I think it's very difficult for our culture to trust, to say, I'm going to put my life in your hands today. And I'm going to trust that you're going to guide me in the right direction, and be open to that. I can remember when we had Timmy, and I was rocking Timmy one night, and he was up, and he was really a pretty good baby. And I remember thinking, the good Lord only gives you what you can handle. And he was really, I think if we'd had some of our other sons later, it would have been really hard. But again, trusting the Lord. And I think I'd have been a very different individual without 10 sons. I think I would have, I'm not sure what I would have been like without Cathy and these 10 boys. Demands were very different, always busy, probably kept me out of trouble just because at home and dealing with all of our boys during the day and stuff. So trust, I think, is hard for us to do, but without that trust and without the good Lord doing what he did for us, I'd be very, very different. And I'm always grateful for that.
And it's been a joy to also to see how the boys, now that they're older, how they interact at work, and how they deal with their colleagues and their own families and their wives. And, being, in a family of 10, it was not Cathy did everything, Joe did everything. It was a we. And so the boys learned to wash clothes and make their beds and do things around the house. And we always remember that at one point Rita was telling someone, and I thank Cathy every day. She taught her sons to do what they do, because they become very much partners, working together with their wives and their children, to see how important family life is to them. It's just a joy. It's that vision, and you want a goal, and then you work towards that goal together. It would have been hard if Joe had said, no, we're not doing it that way. And where we worked together and shared and learned from each other in making life better for everyone.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Cathy and Dr. Joe, just for opening a door into the window of your lives, first off, but also helping us link some of these things with, leadership and family as a parent, leadership as in an institution, and also teamwork, what that looks like, and how you honor the individual person and their gifts to give more to that team, to celebrate their accomplishments and just have fun with it. I think that's the thing that's the coolest of this conversation is, if you do it with joy, if you do it with love, and just be a little lighthearted, there's a lot of growth and opportunity and openness to that movement of the Holy Spirit that we're all looking for. So, we're so excited to honor you on October 7th. Anyone can register for that. We'll make sure to include the link, but thank you so much for this awesome conversation.
All right, Bridget, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Bridget. Pleasure.
Take care.
Good night. Good afternoon.